I am a partner here at Davis Bozeman Johnson. I'm joined by Maoli Mel Davis from our Atlanta office, as well as uh, Helen Martin Gilbert, who is the administrator of Eurie Martin's estate and representative of the family today. We are here to respond to the mistrial that was declared in the 9-day trial against Washington County deputies Henry Copeland, Michael Howell, and Rhett Scott. That jury had been in deliberations prior to the mistrial since Friday, and Judge Flanders, who was presiding over that trial, declared it to be a mistrial as the jury was unable to reach a verdict that was unanimous. And so the family comes to bear witness yet again that they have been denied justice and that they are determined to press forward in pursuit of justice on behalf of Eurie Martin. Eurie Martin, the trial revealed what we already knew about him, that he committed no crime while walking from Milledgeville to Sandersville, that uh, ultimately the crimes that were committed by persons who are paid from the public treasury to serve and protect, and on that day failed to serve Eurie Martin, who was one of the vulnerable of our community, but who still deserved a right to walk down a public highway to go home unmolested. The facts that the trial revealed was that many people saw Eurie Martin on that day, and many folks observed his conduct and demeanor and found it to be altogether appropriate. There was a mail carrier in the area who saw him 4 times and even gave him water on one of those occasions. That same kind of respect for the quiet dignity of Mr. Martin, the kind of uh, respect for his autonomy to move freely, kind of respect for his ability as a citizen to go unmolested, to not be searched or seized without a probable cause and a warrant, to be able to just walk away was observed by many on that fateful day, but it wasn't observed by Henry Copeland, Michael Howell, and Rhett Scott. And today, just as they have over the last 4 years, they still sit indicted for felony murder, aggravated assault, and false imprisonment. That the mistrial on yesterday, as declared by Judge H. Gibbs Flanders Jr., has not changed a single thing about these facts and this family's pursuit of justice. We ultimately believe that Sandersville would teach America something about police accountability, and it still very well may do that as this case proceeds. But it will only do that if the prosecutor in this case, Trip Fitchner, who is a good man and who has a good prosecution team that he leads, uh, gives to Mr. Martin what he is due in this moment, which is uh, a prosecution of his murder to the full extent of the law. And that means that this prosecutor has to represent this case and put these gentlemen on trial again so that there can be some conclusion to this sad, sad story that began when they chose to not be officers of the law, but to take the law into their own hands and be Mr. Martin's judge and executor out on the side of that Deep Step Road in the heart of Washington County on that hot July day. My partner, Maoli Davis, and I sat through most of that trial with the Gilbert family, who possessed a dignity, a quiet and reserved dignity that is simply unbelievable. And we've had the privilege of representing them as we pursue justice. And justice for us was always professional accountability, that these officers should never work again in law enforcement, and they were summarily fired and dismissed. Um, Justice looked like criminal accountability. And of course, we are still pressing our way in that regard. And ultimately, justice will also look like civil accountability. And we intend to make sure that is done. Maoli Davis, who's back in our Decatur, Atlanta office, has some additional comments. And then we want you to hear from Helen Martin Gilbert, who lost a brother and a good friend when Henry Copeland, Michael Howell, and Red Scott murdered her brother out on Deep Step. And she has something that she wants to say to the community that has supported her, to the community that has to ultimately judge these three defendants in any retrial, and to the community that wants to know what it is like to have waited 4 years and sit through a 9-day trial and be told that justice is still delayed. And so she's going to give some remarks as well. If you have questions, you can queue them up in the chat, and we'll take them at the end of Ms. Martin Gilbert's presentation. Attorney Davis.
Good morning, everyone. And again, we're at this place. And the question that we have raised over the years as we have handled civil rights cases is, what will the message be to future generations about whether or not Black lives were truly mattered in 2021? And the hung jury, the mistrial, is an indication to this day that no one has been convicted in the state of Georgia for the murder of an African-American unarmed man. And in this case, Eurie Martin. It is a sad state of affairs that a man walking while Black would be aggressed upon in the way that he was by these three Washington County deputies and ultimately killed. And so we're asking that this district attorney who tried this case, take it back, try it again. He deserves nothing less than that. We believe in his humanity. Eurie Martin was a man, was a human being who deserved a treatment that he did not receive. And so again, we have to, each generation, wonder what future generations will say about us, about this society, where a man like Eurie Martin could be killed, and the men who were charged with the murder ultimately have not been convicted. And so we have said this many, many times to many families. The road to justice is a marathon. This is not a sprint. This family has been patient. They sat with great dignity, with unquestionable resolve throughout the course of this trial. They remained engaged even when this case went up to the Georgia Supreme Court, and they believed that justice would be served and that they would stand and bear witness that this moment in history speaks a different truth than past generations about the value of Black lives. And so I know we will, as a firm, continue to stand with them. I've even had conversations with community members. I think it's important that we finish that walk that Mr. Martin was on, because every person should be able to walk from Milledgeville to Sandersville through Deep Step without being attacked. And our children should know that there are still those among us who will go out and complete that walk and prove to the world that that walk can and should be completed, and that there is no way that an individual who is merely trying to walk to his family should be killed in the way that he was. And so we look forward, obviously. I will just share this. I know that There are some who look at Attorney Johnson and I and say, "Are you attorneys or activists?" Well, we are witnesses to what this world has done and continues to do to our people. And because we are witnesses, we are not, as James Baldwin would say, we're not observers. We're not without passion. We are vested in this fight. We are vested in this struggle. This is for our sons, so that our sons might be able to walk freely throughout Georgia and throughout America. And so we do whatever it is that we need to do to advocate for our clients and for those lives that have unfortunately been pushed to the fringe of American society. But we continue to ensure that they will be centered, and they will be centered as the beautiful humanity that they are and they were and they will continue to be. And so I welcome the comments from Ms. Gilbert, who just sat with such dignity throughout these proceedings, having to hear her brother's final cries for help, having to see his treatment, even to hear testimony from one of the witnesses who said that her brother was treated just like a dead animal. Those are riveting, painful experiences, but she remained unwavered in her commitment and her family's commitment to justice for their brother and their loved one. And so we are just honored to be able to represent this family and help this family in any way and all ways that we can. Ms. Gilbert.
Ms. Gilbert, I know this is difficult, but there are lots of folks who are wondering
Yes,
across.
it is. I
Yes,
don't
ma'am.
know if you all can even hear me at this point.
Yes, ma'am, they can. Go ahead.
Okay. Right now, I am very emotional. My heart is heavy. No one knows the pain of my family as well as myself. I mean, I literally cried myself to sleep last night because my heart was so heavy. I just don't understand, how you come to the decision, how the jury even, not even found me guilty. I just don't understand. We rose to that. You know, it's really hard, you know.
It's
And for the three officers to continue to walk around in Sandersville as if they has not done anything. They still get to see their family, embrace their family. Our family, we cannot embrace Eurie anymore. We cannot talk to Eurie anymore. We don't get to, see him. They still get to see their family, They still get to, sit down and eat and have a conversation with their family. We don't get none of that. I don't even see how they can possibly live with themselves knowing what they did. At this time, I'm just full and really just lost for words because I just could not believe that those was not guilty verdicts. I don't understand that.
Ms. Gilbert, I appreciate your remarks. There were a couple of things that you shared with me as we sat through the trial, and that was primarily based on the defense and the case that they presented. What they want America to believe is that in the first instance, being a suspicious black man walking down the road is cause enough, probable cause enough, that an officer of the law, without any ability to articulate any crime that you commit, can stop you and prevent you from freely moving. They want us to believe that walking down a fog line or on an edge of the road, which is what people in rural America have to do because there are no sidewalks. Is crime enough sufficient to justify the extraordinary use of force that they engaged in, which ultimately resulted in 15 incidents of tasing, where Mr. Martin received 50,000 volts of electricity? That they want us to believe that that was justified for him merely walking upon a roadway. That was the case of the defense. And that maybe an additional crime was littering. I wish that this was a terrible plot in a C movie being broadcast on a late Sunday afternoon. But this was not. This was the primetime defense, that he littered when he threw a Coke can down to the ground, and that was sufficient to justify this excessive use of force and deadly force in the terms of not just the taser, but their asphyxiation of Mr. Martin. The nurse testified, who watched from her window in horror as one large deputy mounted his shoulders and neck and head, and another large deputy held his feet down, and another deputy sat upon his torso until he didn't move anymore. And here's where we are in police accountability in this country. That if a person who is not accused of any crime, or just a mere minor infraction, if there even was, and no law enforcement agency but these three deputies believe that Mr. Martin committed any crime, is sufficient enough to justify death. And I wish we could just tell folks to just stay in their homes. But John Botham demonstrates that staying in your home would not be enough to protect you from this kind of violence. Breonna Taylor would remind us that staying in your bed in your home is not enough. It seems as if there's no respite anywhere for the security of Black bodies when it comes to extrajudicial violence and police-involved violence. And so this is where we are, and it's not hyperbole. And when folks say that we've made progress, I remind them that where we are is 3 police-involved shootings every day. That's where we are in 2021. 3 police-involved shootings every day. When the NAACP, which I've led in Georgia, was founded, there was nearly a man lynched every day. We have 3 police-involved shootings every day, more than the next 7 industrial countries put together, multiplied times 7. This is unsustainable. It's untenable with calling ourselves a civilized society. And Black people, brown people, poor white people who bear the brunt of this kind of violence should not be expected through their tax dollars to finance their own murders by supporting. If you don't believe in defunding the police, if you don't believe in that, then give us solution, because this present circumstance is not sustainable. It's untenable with a democracy. And so I know that there are some questions, and we can take them now. Dana, what do we have?
The first question is from WMAZ. They said, why do you think the jury deadlocked as it did?
One of the concerns that I had, and I think a number of us had, was that there was a juror who was allowed on the jury and to remain on the jury who was a relative of one of the defendants. That was disturbing. Even though under the law, the distant cousin relationship would allow this individual to remain, it would just be difficult for me to convict even a distant cousin for charges as serious as these. And so that is a concern. We would like to continue to see them press forward without obviously a relative on the jury. That's important. That, again, on its very face appears to be not only inappropriate, but that it is not consistent with justice and what the justice system should look like. And so we would like to see that issue addressed as they proceed, to make sure that there are no relatives distance or close in proximity to any of the defendants. Did the prosecutors do everything they could? Of course, they got this case. They were able to get an indictment, something that in the Atlanta metro area we don't see as often. In addition to getting the indictment, they had the hearing that involved the immunity motion, which the trial judge granted, and the case goes up to the Georgia Supreme Court, and the district attorney's office fought to get that trial ruling overruled and for the case to be remanded back to trial, and they won that. And so there are some stylistic things, obviously, that are different for each prosecutor, for each attorney. But at the end of the day, we do believe that they did not in any way attempt to throw this case, that they prosecuted this case, and that they should do so yet again. And so that is our expectation. We have had, as a criminal defense attorney, I've had a murder trial result in a hung jury. And within 6 months, they were back trying my clients again. And that went on 2 other times. And so with these kinds of charges, it is just not unheard of to bring a retrial expeditiously, which we think is wholly and totally appropriate.
So let me just say this. We often have to be critical of those who are responsible for administrating justice, and there's lots to be critical of. But the Middle Judicial Circuit has taught America a lesson about how to prosecute without fear and favor. And that's largely the work of Hayward Altman, who retired as the elected DA, but came out of retirement in as a special assistant district attorney to present this case, and tried this case along with Kelly Winters with the support of the new elected district attorney, Tripp Fitchner. What I know about Tripp Fitchner is that the mechanics of the law he is well versed in, and the confidence of the community he has. And if this was the murder that they believed it was, and the other assorted crimes of false imprisonment and aggravated assault, he will take this case back to a jury. That's our expectation. Dana, next question.
The next question is, what plans do you have for a civil suit?
So we have already served notice of our intent. We wanted the criminal case to proceed for lots of legal reasons, including access to all of the evidence, which is restrained while a criminal proceeding is ongoing. We didn't want to do anything at all to jeopardize the district attorney's ability to hold these officers accountable for their criminal conduct. And so make no mistake about it, we stand as resolved as ever to pursue justice in every way we have available under our system of law. That is both civil, criminal, and we appreciate the sheriff and the other agencies that fired these officers. They should not ever draw a salary from the public treasury again, because the public can have no confidence they will serve and protect them. Next question.
How likely is a different outcome in a second trial?
Well, when you look at the statistics on trials, only about 8% of all cases go to a trial in the state system. In the federal system, it's even less. And of those that result in a mistrial or a hung jury, about 6 to 8%, and as high as 18% of cases that go to trial result in in a hung jury or a deadlock or a mistrial. And the differences between where we are in Georgia, which has about 8% of trials resulting in a mistrial due to the inability of the jury reaching a unanimous decision, and California, for example, who has the highest rate of nearly 18%, is because of different rules, different state-based rules in terms um, of the jury's role and the rules determine a verdict. But in Georgia, when you look at cases that are represented, there is strong evidence that um, that 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 retrial in circumstances like murder, where there's serious violations of the law, are warranted. The public wants an answer as to whether this was a crime or not. The public wants a resolution as to this. And Sandersville will never be the same until there is one. And so there are lots of reasons why the DA should represent this case. And we are in discussions with the DA to ensure that they reach the decision to retry this case. I don't see anything that suggests they wouldn't.
Do you have any idea when a new trial will take place?
No, that's something that's subject to the court. The court admonished each of these defendants that they still remain under indictment. The charges are still there. A mistrial is not an acquittal. And while I heard there was much celebration of these defendants, there was not the sobriety, the fact that a community member is still dead, but there was some celebration. They should know that that is short-lived, because these indictments of the grand jury of Washington County are still in place. And we expect that those who are charged with prosecuting cases will do so in swift regard.
What has Mr. Fitzner said about his plans for a second trial?
We'll need you to talk to Mr. Fitzner about his plans, but he's a good man. He was elected with the confidence of his community to do his job without fear or favor. And he was trained and mentored by Hayward Altman, who's already demonstrated tremendous courage in bringing these charges in the first place. He didn't do what a lot of prosecutors do, even prosecutors in areas where we would expect greater deference to Black lives, like Atlanta, where my partner Miole Davis is. He didn't let a grand jury decide whether this was a crime. He took the report of the GBI and he charged as appropriate and brought these charges. They've demonstrated tremendous courage. And in that regard, there's nothing to suggest they won't pursue justice to the ends of the earth. And that's exactly what Eurie Martin deserves. That's exactly what we all would want if Eurie Martin was one of our family members.
If another trial moves forward, do you believe the jury should be selected outside of Washington County, if that's possible?
Brother Davis?
That's a difficult call. What we want is we really want the citizens of Washington County to address a crime that the district attorney believes and charged was committed in Washington County. Can we have fair-minded jurors from Washington County do that? I'll say one of the striking things that if you were watching, you may not have been able to see from the live feed of the trial, but being in the courtroom, you would, was the absolute racial divide inside of the courtroom. You saw those who were there to support these three deputies, all white. You saw the family and community members calling for justice for Eurie Martin, all Black. And it was a marked difference from the protests that we saw this past summer, where whites and Blacks marched together through the street. So what it says is that we have to look very closely at what it means for us to be a society truly seeking justice for all lives, and in this moment, particularly Black lives. And that courtroom, the reflection of it, was a sobering reminder that while we may have marched through the street this past summer, we have to wonder whether that was all a fad in major cities or in small towns. But when it comes to justice in a very personal way, do our citizenship of these different counties have the courage, as Attorney Johnson has mentioned, to convict one of their own? And that's tough, but that is what we're faced with routinely in the Atlanta metro area. Because it is so large, you don't have the kind of relationships that you might have in smaller counties, and you don't have those same ties. And so I've always been astonished by the courage of those who organize outside of these large metropolitans in the interest of justice, because they go to church, they go to the grocery store, they interact face to face with the very people that they are confronting and demanding a change in both their behavior, their hearts, and how they respect our community. So it's tough. Our hope is that there are Washington County citizens courageous enough to do the right thing. But obviously, we did not have a unanimous number of those in this trial.
And beyond that, venue change would mean that this case would be heard in a venue that had a very similar composition to Washington County, that had a similar racial demography, that had similar size and population, et cetera. So, but the problem of police-involved killings and accountability for law enforcement is a universal American problem. Outside of the circumstances of George Floyd and the accountability in that case with Derek Chauvin being convicted of second-degree murder, which, remember, these deputies were on trial for felony murder, which the equivalent of first-degree murder here in Georgia, that we haven't seen police accountability anywhere. Not anywhere. Not with Eric Gardner, who was choked to death on video in New York. Not with Tamir Rice in Cleveland, who was 12 years old and playing in a park. Not anywhere, period. I mean, the killers of Breonna Taylor have not even been arrested. And so what we were trying to do here in Sandersville was what we haven't seen across this country. There is simply no place from sea to shining sea over these 50 states where you can expect that everyone would be subject to the rule of law. And that is a real indictment of where we sit as a society. Next question.
Have you been in touch with the jurors about how deliberations played out? And are you hearing that the distant cousin played a big role?
No, we haven't. The jury was exhausted as well, and we've allowed them to rest. At the same time, the fact that this distant cousin was on the jury is troubling. It's troubling. Ultimately, we need a dispassionate jury made up of citizens who can set aside their personal feelings one way or another and evaluate a case under the rules of the rules that the court lays out to them, the law. And so that's all we're seeking. That's all the Gilbert family, the Martin family has ever wanted, was a fair jury to reach a conclusion. And we think based on the facts that it is clear that what they did was a violation of the law, violation of basic dignity and respect for human life, and simply cannot be counted as in keeping the good peace and dignity and order of Washington County. That's what this says. It says that this is acceptable, and that can't stand. Next question.
This is the last question. Have you heard what the final jury vote was?
No, the jury deliberations are secret and private, and that's one of the tenets of our system. And so it is something that what we're concerned about is the ability of a jury, any jury anywhere, not just in Washington, but anywhere in this country, to reach a unanimous verdict. Without the extraordinary efforts that we had to engage in bringing Derek Chauvin to accountability in Minnesota. I mean, does it really take global outrage to bring about some accountability in a public courtroom in America? If that's the case, then we are far from equal rights under law, the rule of law, and the notion that no person stands above the law. It appears that we have a group of people who are given badge and gun, but who are not required to follow the law themselves. To whom much is given, much is required. Thank you to everyone who's joined today. Ms. Gilbert, the entire Martin family remains in our sincere prayers. And beyond that, because praying is not enough. If prayers alone would save Black people, we would have already been saved. It will be action that is taken between now and a retrial that will bring about the justice that we seek. And so you've heard a few of those ideas from Attorney Davis, and the community is meeting to determine what their response is. Because there's another player. It's not just the DA, it's not just the defendants, it's not just the attorneys, but the citizens of Washington County, the citizens of goodwill across Georgia and across this country, as they hear about this case, should demand what decency requires, which is some accountability. We appreciate it on behalf of Davis, Bozeman, Johnson, our partners, as well as our lawyers and staff. We thank you all for joining this press conference. Again, if you need a copy of it, you can simply send your request to media@dbjlawyers.com. On behalf of Maoli Davis and myself and the entire Martin family, thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank y'all for your time. And thank you, Ms. Gilbert.
Thank you.
This is